Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review God's Favorite Idiot, Season 1, Episodes 1 through 3. I really probably needed to take 3 episodes to kind of figure out what this show really was, because it kind of spoon feeds you in little episodes here and there. To me, this kind of comes off is as if Evan Almighty was to become a show instead of a film, and because it kind of feels fairly similar in a lot of ways. So I would have to go on and say that this show is very bland, just because I'm like, what is the actual meaning of this show? Because there's so many things that I'm like, okay, they're just wasting time here. Is the meaning of this show is that it's just a killer of time, and you can kind of take your brain out and plop it off to the side and take the show that way? Because really, for this show, it doesn't really feel like there's enough going on. Within 3 episodes, there's just not really anything much of going on, and we're not told right away what's happening. It's just hey, this guy glows for some odd reason, we have to figure it out. Which the title would help a lot to just immediately think that there's going to be some kind of religious tie to this being involved, but people are kind of slowly but surely coming to that conclusion. And so through these 3 episodes, we kind of have some repetitive things happening. Bizarrely, both Tom and Clark are in the bathroom together having dialogue, as well as really us going on and having to just get to know all the the main characters, but side characters also, because again, there's not much really going on in the show. You get my drift, right? It's a bland show. So for this, I would say in 3 episodes, there's some maybe potential here, but you have to go through 3 episodes to get the gist of what's going on. But really, it's but I'm still wanting to figure out why I'm watching this. I'm I'm just it's not something that grabs me right away. It's probably by the end of this season I'll just aha, there it is. But all of else, it's just an odd show that is to be weird. So within these 3 episodes, I'm gonna kind of do a kind of tee up, kind of telling you kind of what happens through these episodes, so you can kind of get a gist of the first 3 episodes. So within the first episode, we go on and we have Clark, who is weirdly being struck by lightning. And you would think, in the movie, the Robert Redford film, The Natural, we had a tree that got hit by lightning, and the guy went on and took that tree and made a baseball bat out of it and smacked a bunch of home runs. So you would think, Mark would somehow be, a person who got superpowers, and not exactly. Not right away. So Clark goes on, gets hit by lightning from this cloud that is to only rain on him. And so Clark is to go on and wake up and go to work. And we have one of his coworkers who notices that Clark is glowing. And that, of course, ends up being Melissa McCarthy's character, Emily. Not Emily, Emily. Because she has to have a different weird name for whatever reason. Because she ends up saying it in the show. I'll get to it in spoilers. Hopefully. If I remember. So we have everybody that is just wanting to take forever to just figure out why Clark is glowing, to the point of them having to need to go on and ask Clark, why are you glowing, buddy? So Clark doesn't understand what everyone's talking about, but by the end of the pilot episode, he eventually is to do this yet again. And so there's actual proof that he is to go on and do this. So eventually, within other episodes, we have an angel that just comes down from the sky and is to go on and tell Clark that he is to be chosen by God to basically be this Earth's like Messiah, or like a Moses kind of character, just like Evan Almighty was in the Evan Almighty movie, to maybe at some point save humanity, because both heaven and hell are battling together, and it may be that hell may win this battle. Who knows? So we have Clark, who is to be this kind of Steve Carell, Moses kind of character, and he doesn't know what he actually needs to do to save humanity, or what the heck he's really going on and doing. So we have it to where everyone in the office is just trying to focus on figuring this out, and like the boss is kind of getting aggravated because it's like, hey, you guys like really haven't been working in the last 2 days. And they're like, well, it's been way longer than that. And he's like, okay. So we have to go on and have to like solve the riddle of what is going on with Mark here. And so eventually we have reverends involved. Eventually we have fathers and saunas being involved. And really within 3 episodes, we've kind of gotten nowhere close to figure out what Mark's real true purpose is, but that eventually the devil is coming to Earth, and they're just going to have to deal with that. Okay, whatever that means. I don't know. The show is just kind of very weird, and I was like, okay, like I like that there's some kind of like religious thing or supernatural kind of thing kind of going here, but the whole like spoon feeding of what's going on here, like in a mixture of just kind of really common stuff, is just like killing my interest in the show. So we'll see. If people are really interested in the show, I am happy to go on and continue to keep watching the show. I'm just trying to figure out what the purpose of the show is, and maybe by probably the end of the season, I'm like, oh, there it is. There's the reason why. There's the purpose of the show. But we had to get all the way there to get to that point of me going like, aha, like I liked this one thing. In episode 3, there is this kind of LARPing kind of thing that they kind of briefly go into that I thought was kind of cool. So check that out. Like I didn't want to really spoil anything. Like I want to try to be vague, but like there's weird things that they just do in this show for whatever goofy reason. It kind of feels like if The Office didn't have those moments when people are to kind of peel off and do their own like kind of commentaries on stuff. Like this feels a lot like The Office, but with weird, goofy, supernatural elements kind of being mixed into here. That's kind of what it feels like this show really is. So with that said, I think I'm just going to go on into just saying, hey, this is on Netflix. It's trending right now because it is. So let's go on into that double 5-time territory. Let's just go into spoilers, real true spoilers about this show. So let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time I get to spoil this episode. So we have Clark. And so the beginning of this episode, we have him going and putting on this Harry Styles song, Bullet, and whatever. This song is kind of a fairly old song, but then I guess Harry Styles is covering it, and it consistently gets looped into the show. You may either like this song or eventually get really irritated, but either way it'll probably stick in your head. Because I'm consistently getting like freaking flashes of that song consistently in my head now. Hopefully they just go on and they don't overuse that song so often, or eventually it ends up becoming like Jennifer's Body, where the characters are like, oh my god, I'm so sick of that song. The bullet! Sure. So Clark is to go on, and I guess he has cats that are outdoor cats. So we have him feeding one cat, and then he's trying to look for the other. And so Clark is outside looking for his cat, thinking that his other cat is in some tree somewhere. So all of a sudden, there is this cloud that just emerges upon Clark, and it's to start to rain on only him. It's kind of like Bruce Almighty moment for a minute here. And then all of a sudden, lightning just strikes upon Clark. Clark falls over and then is to wake up and be like, oh, okay, that was interesting. Come to find out, Clark's father is to not only one, like, continue to do like these weird sauna sessions with him, and I really enjoy Kevin Dunn. I've seen Ghostbusters 2 hundreds upon hundreds of times, and I always remembered that he was to go on and be the guy who was in the world of the psychics, like scene of that movie, where he was going to try to write a book, and like he was telling about the end of the world and this and that. So like if you've never seen Ghostbusters 2, check it out because they did Afterlife. So, but I've also seen Kevin Dunn in Transformers. But moving on. So we have Kevin Dunn who's playing Gene, who Gene is to go on and have sauna sessions with his son Clark. And so Gene is saying like, hey, like, I saw that you were kind of like passed out on your yard last night. Like, what happened? And Gene and so Gene's kind of concerned. Clark is like, well, I don't really know. I don't know what you're talking about. So like really, like Gene is to just kind of be a good dad, but he is to also tell Clark, it's like, well, hey, like I feel like you're keeping things from me. Like I think that you're lying to me, and so now like I don't feel like I want to go and be in a sauna with you because I feel like you're lying to me. But Clark just doesn't know what's going on. Like he's very confused. He's very baffled. So Clark is to go on and is to have eventually have gone to work late at night. And so now we have to have Emily come to work in this scooter and is to now have to tell this bizarre story. So Emily comes to work and is to be on this scooter, and she's making her way, kind of passing through all these people, talking to random strangers and whoever. So Emily's on the scooter driving on the sidewalk, and so she makes it into the office, and she's going in to speak with Mosen, Wendy, and Tom. And the other two coworkers, she's just trying to shoo them away, like F off in the nicest, courteous way. So Emily is turning to her coworkers, and she's like, well, hey, like, I went to a restaurant last night, and I end up almost accidentally, like, roofing myself, because she was trying to, like, see that there was to be a guy at this restaurant, and come to find out that this restaurant didn't serve any food, so it's actually a bar. So Emily is to go on, and she's to say that she was looking over at this guy, and so she's like, he's looking at me up and down. So she went to go on and take a mint and put it in her mouth, and come to find out it was a beta blocker instead. And so now Emily was desperately trying to figure out like what kind of thing that she could try to like condense this roofie down, and she couldn't order any food. And so it seems like when they were like the coworkers were talking to her, they were like, man, like, why can't you tell like the truth of the story right out of the gate? Because the more and more that we're kind of pulling apart your story, the more we realize that like that you are to actually say this, and you actually say so. We have Emily that goes through and is to mention that after she was to go to this bar, she then came to work because she forgot her purse. So Emily had to go all the way back to her work for her purse, and she realized that Clark was there, and Clark was bizarrely glowing. It was like a yellow and orange light that was all over Clark, like all over his like skin, to where like she was saying that he was obviously glowing. So Emily is looking at these people and they're just like, I don't believe this story. And we have Tom who's going on and kind of saying what this real show is really about. Where Tom is like, well, like, you just kind of gave us like a nothing burger with a nothing bun and with nothing sauce on top and this and that. And so all of the coworkers are just like, but yeah, but you were like drunk last night. You like, we can't really trust you of what you're telling us because like you were drunk, you were this, you were that. So, but Emily was to make it to work and she saw Clark, and as soon as she saw Clark, she passed out. And come to find out, Clark was to go on and find Emily and was to realize she was passed out. And so I think he ended up trying to help her or possibly do any number of things, because we don't know. It just kind of briefly showed that Clark realized that Emily was passed out at some other part of the show. So we have where everybody just goes back to their cubicles and starts to go to work. Supposedly, it takes a number of episodes to find out that this is to be an IT department. Because I'm like, okay, what do they do? What do they really do on this show? And it doesn't feel like they do much of anything. So we're all of a sudden, we consistently have Tom and Emily that argue and bicker back and forth. It's annoying, but it is what it is. And so we have their boss, who is a name of Frisbee, and he's like, I'm sorry, like, my name is not Frisbee, but they keep calling him that anyways. Because really, because of what he usually wears when he comes to work, it looks like he plays Frisbee golf, and that's why they end up continuing to call him Frisbee. And weirdly, the nickname just kind of catched on, so everybody just calls him Frisbee. To where we go on and have like Clark going on like, hey Frisbee, and he's like, oh hey, hi, hey Clark. So we go on into the show, and now Clark makes it into work, and so everybody's just like whispering, gossiping about Mark possibly glowing, and they want to try to figure out if it's true. So we eventually have Mark at one point going to the bathroom, and I guess he's having some constipation problems, probably because people are talking to him in the bathroom. So that would probably be a clue that he's probably having constipation. So Tom just kind of walks in there, seeing that Clark is in the bathroom. So he kind of knocks on the stall beside of him, and I'm like, "What are you guys gonna give like hand gestures behind underneath the bathroom stall?" Because I saw that whole George Michael thing, and also weird other things that kind of were to be bizarre. Uh, to have to just go on to like, what the is this? Anyways, so Tom is asking Clark about like, well, hey man, like, so like it feels like Emily is to have this like weird thought that you glow. So do you? And Clark is just like, glow? No, like I think I'm fine. Like I don't know what you mean by that. Because Tom doesn't really say that it's Emily who says this, because like he'll never hear the end of it from her. But Tom is just right out ask Clark, it's like, hey, do you glow? And Clark's like, no, like, and I think I'm fine. I don't know why anybody's asking that. And so Tom was like, oh, okay, well, you tell me that, then it's good enough. So like as if people are like placing bets. So we then go on and have Clark, who is to go and eat this salad, and we have Clark and Emily, who is talking, and so we had it to where Clark and Wendy were talking together, and Wendy was telling Clark that um, that Clark missed his shot at one point getting with Emily, while Emily was kind of off, just kind of talking to a bunch of coworkers, which leads to this whole salad moment. So Clark at one point was at this kind of office, like dinner, where everybody left, but both Clark and Emily. And so Clark was just so nervous that he quickly left also. So now Clark has this second chance, and so Clark is eating the salad. Emily comes in the break room to just kind of talk to Clark. So we go on and we have Clark, who is to ask Emily out. Just like, well, hey, like I don't know if you're busy, and like the more and more that he starts talking, the more and more he just digs himself into a hole. But then he realizes he's digging himself into a hole, so he thinks that if he can keep talking, that it'll dig him out of this hole, which it really doesn't. It just kind of keeps having him go further and further into this hole, and so to where like he just kind of says whatever comes out of his mouth. So that might not possibly be the best thing to try and attempt to do, but he's doing it anyways. So, Clark, Emily. Emily agrees to the date, so Clark is like, oh, great. And we also have Clark, who tells Emily that Tom was to weirdly ask him if he glows, and Emily's like, that piece of that cuss word, that mother effer. And Clark is just like, what are you talking about? And like, oh no, like that Tom, you know? So we have Clark, who's just like, whatever. So come to find out, we have Mosin, who in one of these episodes, I think it might be this one, but it might be others. Mosin is to go on and be one of the co-workers that is to want to try to solve this Rubik's Cube, but he can't quite figure it out. And I guess like Pakistanis, or who, like the culture that he's from, can not like accept defeat. And so eventually like he wants to go on and just solve this Rubik's Cube. And so Tom is to go on and like, well, like why don't you just go onto a YouTube video and you can see how to easily solve it. And Mosin is saying like, well, no, I can't just do that. Like that's cheating. So like I can't just go on and just cheat to win. So Tom is just like, well, like okay, well that's too bad, because like Tom can't even supposedly access YouTube because he doesn't know how. It's like, well, don't you have the internet? And he's like, so, random things that they just plop in here. Within a later episode, I think right around the third episode, when like the characters are starting to think that the world is possibly going to end, we have Wendy that goes on and is to give Mosin this more complicated Rubik's Cube for him to solve, and for him to kind of never give up on this Rubik's Cube. And that Wendy also thinks that Mosin is nice, or something along those lines of like, hey, like, why aren't we dating? Because you, like we've kind of been having googly eyes for a number of episodes already. Because at one point, we have Emily that was to ask Wendy about being from Australia, and in the pilot episode, and Wendy's like, no, I'm not from Australia, I'm from New Zealand. And like, how is it that you don't know that by now? I've said it so many times. And so Mosin is to kind of go on and like kind of like support like what Wendy is going on and talking about. So Tom is kind of looking at them like, like there's something there. But yeah, so like, but we also had the point where Tom, after Emily was to tell this story, and how Tom was mentioning like, well, hey, like you should go on and tell the actual truth the first time around, and instead of having us figure out the truth later on. And then Emily goes on and makes this vicious burn about this guy's mustache, and like it's a joke that doesn't make sense because she ends up saying something about like his mouth having a mustache and this and that, and Wendy saying like, yeah, that was such a burn, and it's like, no. So within this first pilot episode, we finally have Clark and Emily go on this date. And so again, we have Clark who's going on and again every time digging himself in a hole while talking. So the waitress is to come over to ask them like, hey, like, what's your order? So we have Emily that just wants tequila shots, and then Clark is to ask about the chicken there. And he's to go on and on and on about this story about like roasted chicken or like some kind of chicken. I think he would just continue to just say the words chicken, chicken, chicken. Isn't that great? So all of a sudden, while Clark is having this story about him and his dad and chicken and roast chicken and whichever chicken was the best chicken to chicken, all of a sudden Clark starts glowing again, and everybody is to start going on and like doing like phone videos, trying to go viral off this this glowing man for whatever goofy reason. And so all of a sudden we go on and have like the one video of Clark glowing gets 8 million hits easily, and it's like, oh my god, this is crazy. So we go on and we have Clark who is to finally go like, oh, I guess I am glowing. So we now have it in the like the second episode, because the first episode was just most of that, but me talking about other episodes also. So in the second episode, they're trying to figure out and decipher why Clark is glowing. And so like they're going in the office and they're coming up with all these conclusions that it may be religious, or that it may be like this this illness. Like, could it be lead poisoning? Could it be that he swallowed a light bulb? Who knows? So they're going on, and what they really just think that it could possibly be is some kind of religious thing. And so that's the assumption everybody's going on with. So Wendy is going on and having this scripture from the Bible that she's reciting, and Mark is to go on and finish the rest of the thing as if he knows it by his brain, just rattles it all off. And they're like, wait a minute, how is it that you knew that so well? And so Clark's like, I don't know. So within the second episode, we go on and we have both Emily and Clark, who I guess are to eventually just easily be an item here. And that at one point Clark is telling Emily, it's like, well, hey, like, I can understand if you don't really want to go on and hang out with me. And Emily's like, no, I want to be like hanging out with you as much as possible. So Emily and Clark go off to eventually be like seeing an angel just kind of fall out of the sky, which this guy is to be called Shamel. Like it kind of sounds like ShamWow, like when eventually they kept trying to pronounce it, like they were trying to say Samuel, and he's like, no, it's Shamuel. So they go on, and this angel is to mention that, hey, yeah, like only you guys, both Emily and Clark, you're the only ones that can see me for whatever reason. I don't know why. Is Emily chosen by God for whatever reason, and she doesn't glow? But so Shamel is to mention that heaven and hell are having a battle, and so the reasoning for why Clark has been chosen is not really clear, but he's eventually going to be like the guy for humanity. For whatever reason, he's just that guy. But we also come to find out in the third episode, so is like Frisbee weirdly is to also be like a worker for this IT department, but then he also is to be a worker for Heaven for whatever reason. So Frisbee can go on and easily just see Shamel for I don't know why. It just, whatever they just want to write for this show to just eat up time, go ahead. So the angel just leaves and still doesn't really exactly tell Clark what his real purpose is. So Clark just goes on and is to just have all these pamphlets and to give everybody these pamphlets saying, hey guys, you want to talk about God? Hey guys, you want to talk about religion? You want to talk about some more religion? Because we have it where Clark is a certain kind of religion that, like, is to go on and be like, well, why was I exactly chosen for this? So, nobody really knows. It's probably just this random thing. And so they were trying to figure out why he might have been chosen. Like, because he's a simple, nice guy. And Mark's like, well, I'm not simple. Like, I go on and I have sauna sessions with my dad. And I feed my cats. Oh, wow, wait, I am that simple. So we go on in to this second episode, and Clark and Emily are hanging out with one another, and so eventually it seems there seems to be people that are accumulating in front of Clark's place. Some of them are to be on Clark's side, and then some people are just like, hey, I don't like you, like he's the devil, and so on and so forth. So Emily and Clark are just going on and watching some television, and come to find out there is this reverend who is possibly saying that Reverend Milton Throp, what a goofy name. This reverend is going to mention that he feels that Clark could be some sign of the devil and not like some divine intervention, whatever. So we have this reverend that is to not be optimistic about Clark and is to treat him like a freak. And I'm just like, wow, like a reverend who just treats people that way. Okay, that doesn't quite make sense. So we have, of course, Emily that then turns off the TV after that kind of horrible thing, and it seems that Emily and Clark, we have Clark with the power of just kind of like adjusting all of his shades to think maybe Clark and Emily are gonna get busy, or just decide to just be in the same home together. And we have again these kind of protesters who are kind of against Clark, but that's kind of what happens within this episode. So we go on with the. I want to say that there's more things going on within the second episode, but it feels like there really isn't much. We have Tom that is to want to go on and be Clark's bodyguard. And so, again, we have a toilet session where both of them together, and Tom's like, well, hey, man, like, I want to be your bodyguard, and I'll fight people for you. And Clark's like, well, Tom, like, can you really fight anybody? And he's like, well, no. Clark was like, well, isn't that a hole in your logic? And Tom is like, well, I just want to be a bodyguard for you. I'll protect you. So it's like, okay, well, what can you really do? What's your qualifications? So we have it where finally Tom breaks down and eventually is to get very emotional and is to finally like apologize for all the crap that he has ever gone on and said to Emily, and they kind of have this like hugging out moment. And so Tom is getting kind of weird. But we also just have moments where I think Clark is changing certain people for the good, to maybe Clark being consistently around people is shifting them to be better people than they possibly were. Maybe he's having that effect on people. Not quite sure yet. It's too soon to tell. So Clark is to also go on, and we're probably going to sift into the third episode here. So get ready for that. We have it at one point where Jean is having another sauna session with Clark. And so Clark is going on to this sauna session with all these protesters and everything outside of his house. And so we have Jean, who has the Reverend in the sauna, and we have it, of course, where Clark is asking this Reverend, it's like, well, hey, like, aren't you, like, hot? Aren't you sweating? And we have the Reverend who's like, righteous people don't sweat. It's like, okay. I'm sure this is just fake sauna anyways, but anyways, it is what it is. And why would you go on and legitimately have people sweat in this sauna when you have a camera crew that has to film this and everything like that? It just seems absurd for a show to go on and do that. So we have Clark talking to this Reverend, and it gets to the point where Clark can now control his glowing, and so he purposely glows. And Jean and the Reverend, like, Jean is kind of like, whoa, about this, but then the Reverend is like, hey, like shut that off, shut whatever that off. Like, I know it's some kind of trick of yours. Like, go on and take the remote that's out of your butt and turn that off. I guess that could really understand why Clark is so constipated, and as well as he's going on and telling like his coworkers that he's constipated, because at first they were all asking him, it's like, well, like, hey, like, I'm sure you're very like I'm sure you're having like a lot of diarrhea because all the stress of what's going on. And Clark's like, no, it's actually the opposite. I'm getting constipated because of all the stress. And they're like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. And that's why Tom kind of goes in the bathroom. It's like, well, hey, yeah, I get that you're really constipated, but hey, I want to talk to you. I want to tell you some things about the whole bodyguard thing. So we go on, and we have the Reverend, who is to still think that Clark is to be some demonic presence of sorts. So the Reverend bails out. So within episode 3, we go on in here, all up inside of it. And so we have Clark and we have Emily, who are to retreat from Clark's home with all these protest people. You would think that Clark would just go to Emily's place, because no protesters would be probably there. You would think that'd be the smart idea, to just go to other people's house. But anyways, so Emily and Clark go on to jump on this scooter and are making their way to work with all these kind of protesters who are kind of saying some hurtful things to Clark. Or we go on and we have at one point where these people are trying to approach Clark, and one woman is asking Clark, like, heal me, Clark. And Clark's like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But then all of a sudden, one guy is going on and talking to Clark in Spanish, and Clark is to be able to perfectly kind of speak to him in Spanish and say all these kind of eloquent things that this guy is to go on, like, like, so he leaves. And Emily is to ask Clark, it's like, you know Spanish? It's like, I guess I do. It's another one of those abilities. So Clark and Emily go off to work. And so eventually within their workday, we have Shamuel, who is to appear to both Emily and Clark, and Frisbee is to also make his way to them. And we also had the Frisbee moment that Frisbee was going on and telling all the workers, like, hey, like, you guys haven't been working in a number of days. And Emily's like, well, it's been way longer than that. Even to the point to where it's some point of this show, Emily is to take this nap while she's working. And Frisbee's like, you can't go on and do that. And Emily's like, sure I can. So, uh, so Shamel is coming to Clark and Emily and telling them that Satan is coming to Earth. That's the real message here. As well as us having to figure out why the heck Frisbee can see Shamel. That seems to be the big thing. So, really, in the third episode, that's just kind of how it ends. But we also have the whole LARPer thing in the third episode. So, these guys are all to kind of crowd around and eventually see that evidently Tom is really into LARPing, but come to find out so is Emily. So we have this video of Tom LARPing, and it's like very substantial and whatever. So this guys have this like knightly outfit, and we have this ogre that is to not be green or Shrek-like, but it's an ogre supposedly. And so we have Tom, who I guess was going to fight off this ogre, but instead, Tom has to go on and fight Emily, who is to appear as basically the Game of Thrones, like Lady of Dragons kind of character, and all of a sudden start to fight off Tom. And Amy just wipes the floor with Tom because, of course, she does, because Tom is a lesser character on this show. So, and it's funny to have a woman just beat the crap out of Tom. Sadly enough, my bad, Tom, but it's the truth. So they're all watching on as Emily is to beat up Tom, and they have a good laugh about it. And so, like, that's the whole scenario about LARPing. We had this whole big presentation about this whole LARPing thing, but like not much came out of it. Are they going to go back to the whole LARPing thing in other episodes? Probably not. It was just some random thing that they just could eat up time with. So with that said, speaking of eating up time, I think I've eaten up enough time to go on and talk about this show. So yeah, that's really all that happens within a bulk of these 3 episodes. Other than that, let me know if there's something that I forgot about, because I'm sure there probably was. Other than that, I think I'm just going to get out of here so I can go on and review something else for today. Depending on whether or not this is to go well or no one cares, then I will just kind of go on and just adjust accordingly. If nobody really watches this review, then I'll probably just go on and watch any other movie, show, something, and just be like, oh, okay, that was nice to have watched 3 episodes of this for what it was. So with that said, I think I'm just going to get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.